today we are going to understand what is the Nexus 5000 series, 7000 series of switches and Nexus 5000 series. Let me make it big at least so that we can see. Yeah. So now in Nexus we have these families, Nexus 9000 series. And before to start, I'll give you the background that Nexus 9000 series or Nexus switches from Cisco is going to use only for data center switches. These switches are called data center switches because they have the higher throughput and higher capacity. Let me check who is this. Okay. So these switches are data center switches just because of these are having the higher capacity, higher throughputs and good performance switches. And they are having a less bugs and it's a stable switch. That's the reason we are going to use these switches in our data center environment. Vinod, I can't hear you. If you want to speak, just close your mic with right. Then speak.
Hello.
Yeah, Vinod.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes. Now I can.
Okay, sure.
Okay. So this Nexus series switches are used for data center switches, correct? So these switches are having a separate families for in respect of networking data center perspective or networking data perspective. Although we have a lot of other family as well or the other series as well, but these are the popular switches which we are going to use or customer is going to use in various places for the data perspective. For example, Nexus 9000 series. 9000 series switches are going to use spine and leaf perspective and it is most popular in ACI domain. Just one second. Okay, so in Nexus 9000 series of switches are going to use spine and leaf topology, which we will discuss in ACI domain. When we discuss ACI, at that moment we are going to discuss in detail about what is spine and leaf. But as of now, these switches are going to use as a spine and leaf. And the main objective for this is that they are especially designed for ACI environment. Right? So when we discuss the ACI, then we'll understand more about how these switches are especially used for ACI. Either we have the option to use the Nexus 7000 series switches in our spine. Let me make a mic marker. Where's my? One second, guys. Where's my marker? Oh, why it is not moving? Yes. Oh. Portfolio. Okay. I guess from here. Yes. Okay. Okay, right. It's sometimes it's difficult to how to manage this double-sided screen, but anyway. So this Nexus 9000 series, which we are talking here, this Nexus 9000 series of switches are going to use in ACI environment, and we discussed a bit about in last class. So whosoever has not attended the last class, I'll share the video so that he will get an idea. But very high level, we are going to discuss that these Nexus 9000 series of switches are having a two sub series of switches. One is Nexus 9500, second one is 9300. These switches are especially designed for a specific purpose. For example, this Nexus 9500 switch is and only used for spine purpose. You cannot use the switch in a leaf or any other way. That is only for spine. Why spine? That we will discuss in ACI environment, why these switches are only reserved for spine environment only. And these switches are dedicated used for leaf. The entire family are going to use as a leaf perspective, except some of the cases, right? Except some of the cases. Like they have configured 9332 and sorry. Sorry guys. So we have the 93 क्या हो गया? So these two switches 9332 and 9364 switches are exception for in respect of leaf. These two switches they called as a baby spine. These baby spine switches are used for spine purpose. These are the small switches, right? So if the customer is not interested to invest more money in their data center, a small customer, and they don't afford the higher modular based switches, then this fixed switches will help them, and they can use these two baby spine switches to use the spine and leaf topology in their ACI environment. Right? Except these two 9300 series switches, except these two, all the remaining switches will be used in a spine environment, leaf environment. Right? All those we will discuss in ACI, how exactly it is work, but this is the way. Let's move to next 7000 series switches. This is the older switches which Cisco has raised, Cisco has bring it, and they give us that these switches are having the special mechanism and they are especially used for data center perspective, right? So these switches are special for what? These switches are having the capability for the virtualization, right? So these switches they have developed in this way that we can use these switches as a virtualized environment. Virtualized means that we can create multiple virtual switches within a one physical switches. We will discuss more when we are going to discuss the next data center technology, how this virtualization is going to get work. But as of now, for the understanding perspective, these 7000 series of switches are going to use as a virtualized platform. For example, these are the one big Nexus 7000 series switches, which is ideally a modular base switch. All series of switches are the modular base 7000 series. So we have some of the modules connected within that, line cards, a supervisor engine, right? So these line cards, these switches are fixed. This is a physical chassis. We have the supervisor engine which is fixed. But within these switches, right? Within these physical switches, we have the options that we can use to create a different multiple switches. For example, within these switches, we can create one physical switch, one virtual switch here, one virtual switch here, one virtual switch this side, and one virtual switch this side. So this switch, for example, this may be the switch number 1, this may be switch number 2, 3 and 4. All these four switches are having their own separate configuration, separate interface related configuration, separate config, interface config, separate routing domain, separate VLAN database. Everything they have the separate individual configuration in respect of these virtual switches. Either the virtual switch 1, virtual switch 2, 3 or 4, any one. Even the subnets, if we are going to use one big subnet in switch 0 or switch 1, then the same subnet can be used in switch 2, switch 3 or switch 4. Just like the concept of, we might heard it about VRF, virtual routing and forwarding. But this feature is only giving us a routing instance separation, that we can use a routing instance separate in respect of global configuration. But this switch, this 7000 series of switches are giving a functionality of this virtualization. And within a one physical box, we have the option that we can create multiple virtual switch like this one, 1, 2, 3 and 4. And it's depend how many virtual switch we can create, how many we can virtual switch, or this virtual switch we cannot create. Which switch will be managed for entire configuration. Like they have the concept for administration. So they give us an option that we can use one switch as an admin purpose, and the remaining all switches can be used in the production environment and get connected or production devices over there. Right? So they are giving this virtualization functionality in only this 7000 series of switches. This 7000 series switches is having a two variant. One is, which was initially launched, is 7000 series. After launching this 7000 series of switches, they have launched another series that is called 7700 series, which is more powerful than 7000 series. Right? How it is more powerful? Because initially they launched this 7000 series switches and get the feedback from the customer and the testing division, and based upon this feedback they had created a one new switches which is called 7007 switches. After this 7000 creation, they have bring this new switches which is Nexus 9000 series. Later on, they have not bring any of the virtualization concept in this series of switch. Right? So let's understand how exactly this 7000 series of switch will work in detail in today's class. But before to move, let's understand what is this Nexus 5000 series of switches. This Nexus 5000 series switches, they have designed and developed for the specific purpose, which is a storage perspective. Storage means that we we might require the storage, the server need to connect the storage box, the storage array, some centralized hard disk. So that things, we have the limitation over here in Nexus 7000. We have some specific port that is only support the storage. We might know if we are aware about the storage perspective, right? That is only fiber channel port that is going to get work for storage perspective. But here in 7000 series, they have given focus on Ethernet technologies, Ethernet switches. although they have the option to use the storage in 7000, but it is limited to that. So what the plan is, they said these 7000 series of switches will going to use for the core device connectivity, core layer. We might heard it that we have the standard 3-tier architecture. One is core layer, distribution layer, and the access layer, right? So they said these 7000 series switches is a modular based switch. It is a higher capacity switch. So we recommend that either we can use this switch as in distribution layer or the core layer. Preferred, they said, it is having the capability to connect your layer 2 infrastructure as well as layer 3 infrastructure, as well as some of the storage devices as well. So we recommended, Cisco recommended that this 7000 series of switches can be used over here in distribution layer. But as we have this virtualization functionality in 7000 series, so we have the option that we can configure multiple virtual switch. In that case, we can create one virtual switch and then configure this virtual switch in our core environment as well. Right? So that is the main objective for 7000 series. But 5000 series of switches, they especially designed for storage connectivity as well as server connectivity. Because server is what? Server is the main computing resources which are lying in our data center, which are running on top of the network. So everything is designed based upon the requirement. So server are talking to the storage and getting the storage connectivity and then booting up and providing a application services. So in that case, we have to think about all the aspect of the server connectivity. So they had developed this Nexus 5000 series of switches so that we can connect our storage devices as well as server devices. Initially, this 5500 series of switches is having a 1 and 10 gigabit of speed. When they launched the new series, which is called 5600 series, they are giving us a more flexibility, 1, 10, 25, 40, or the storage connectivity, for example 2, 4, 8 and 16 Gbps, a customized speed. They are giving us an option to use the fiber channel interface in Nexus 5000 or fiber channel over Ethernet. So we have the option, either we can use the native fiber channel interface on Nexus 5000 series, or we can use the existing Ethernet interface and get it connected to our storage devices via 𝐶𝐲𝐸 technology that we will discuss in our storage class in detail. But how this 𝐶𝐲𝐸 is work, how this FC is going to get work, what all helping component are using for this FC connectivity. Right? So this is a very high level of Nexus 5000 series. We'll discuss in next class how this upcoming class today, how this Nexus 5000 series of switches are going to get work. Let's move on this Nexus 2000 series of switches. Right? So this 2000 series of switches are physically a switch. Right? These are physical switch but are not a switch, not a intelligence within this switch. They are the dump switches, just like. They do not have any intelligent mechanism within that. It means no CPU, no supervisor, no memory, nothing. Nothing is there. So how these switches are going to perform, how these switches are decide which way, what the data path are going to get used, which routing table, which forwarding table we need to use. So the decision is made by their top switches, right? Top switch means that these switches are these 2000 switch is required to connect to some of the uplink devices, some of the upstream devices. So that switch provide the instruction to this 2000 series of switch, and then switch will get perform the same action. So this top switch can be your any switch. It can be your Nexus 9K switch, it can be your 7K, it can be your 5K. Any of the switch you can use to connect this Nexus 2000 series of switch, and these upstream switch, these top switch 9K, 7K or 5K will provide a instruction to this Nexus 2000 series. Based upon that instruction or that information, this 2000 series of switch is performing an action. You might heard one of the technology which is called fax, right? So this fax is called fabric extender, and this fax is especially designed for those switches which are not having the intelligence. They just like this 2000 series of switches. So these 2000 series switches are designed to connect upstream device via the fax technology, which we will discuss in upcoming class, right? And this Nexus 1000V switch, let me erase all of
Sorry,
those so that,
sorry to interrupt.
yeah, please.
Sorry to interrupt. For the 2000 series, there is some disturbance coming, I think. Yeah. So for the 2000 series, if we need to create even a VLAN or anything, it have to come from upstream device.
Yes, so let me create a topology for you for sample topology. For example, this this 2000 series of switch is going to connect to one upstream switch that may be your 5K. This is your 2K switch. So this switch is not having the CPU inbuilt with them, no memory.
Okay.
So
Okay.
as soon as we connect this switch to the upstream switch, this switch is having the CPU and memory, everything. They have the
Mm-hmm.
intelligence mechanism. Whenever we want to do, we want to connect any of the server to this 2K switch. In that case, we need to specify that which VLAN we are going to use. Either this interface will be the L2 interface or L3 interface. So all the
Oh, no,
relevant
for
configuration,
example,
let me complete.
for example, no.
So these interface, in respective of these particular interface related configuration, we have to give this instruction to this 5K that the switch which is connecting to your particular interface, these one, and having this number of interface, this interface is must be the trunk interface or access interface. That instruction we have given from Nexus 5000 series switches. Then only this configuration is pushed to this particular interface, and the interface are going to convert as a trunk or access.
Okay.
Make sense?
So if the upstream device, yes, if the upstream device is a ACI architecture with a spine leaf, so we have to do this 2K configuration from ACI itself.
Yes. In case of the ACI, then
Mm.
we don't need to log into this upstream device, any of the upstream device. In case of ACI, we have to log into the controller, which we will discuss in ACI class. Then we have to log into the controller and give the instruction to controller that one of the upstream device which name is 5K1 is having the one downstream device which is having the name of 2K1 via the one of the technology called fax. So just do make the interface as a trunk for this particular interface so that the server can get the gateway connectivity. Maybe this server is having this number of IP address, right?
Okay.
So in case of ACI, we have
Okay.
to perform the same action, but not from the individual switch. We have to do it from controller perspective.
Okay. Got it.
Okay. Let's move to next 1000 V switch. As this name says V, this is virtualized switch. This is not a physical switch. And this switch was actually developed in respect of VMware. You might heard it that VMware is a computing organization. They have given the resources in respect of computing. So VMware itself is having their computing environment, but not a more competitive, more confidence in the networking. They are not aware about the same kind of the next networking technology like Nexus, but they are quite good enough in computing. They are expert in computing. They are expert in virtualization. So Cisco has connected with VMware and suggested that you guys are using a one dedicated one standard switch which is having a basic functionality. That switch name is virtual switch in respect of VMware terminology. So you have the basic switch which is having which name is virtual switch and having the basic functionality. We are giving you one of the function, one of the switch, that is 1000 V switch. This switch is having all the Nexus features which we are going to use here. So entire switch functionality you will get it in your VMware environment, computing environment. And the benefit will be that your computing resources will get the same features and functionality, which is not possible in your VS switch, virtual switch, a basic switch. So Cisco has developed one of the switch for VMware. This is 1000 V switch that is actually designed for VMware perspective. And when we are discussing about VMware in ACI, at that moment we'll understand how this 1000 V switch are going to connect to VMware. Either we can connect it or not connect it. That all up to us. But we have the option that we can use 1000 V switches to our VMware environment as well. And this is one of the topic in ACI where we are going to integrate our ACI to VMware. And before the integration, we are going to understand this VMware concept first, especially the networking point of view. How this VMware networking is actually work. Right? So at that moment we'll understand what is a virtual switch, what is a vSphere distributed switch. This is one another terminology in VMware. So these two terminology is important in respect of networking, VMware networking. Then only we can go ahead with the ACI integration with our ACI to VS or maybe ACI to VDS, virtual distribution switch. So all those things we need to understand first before to integrate our ACI to VMware. And at the same time, we can get more understand about this 1000 V switch. But especially for the as of current perspective, that this 1000 V switch is designed for VMware perspective, and these switch are replace your existing switches, which is virtual switch or V distribution switch. This 1000 V switch has been replaced these two switches and giving the entire Nexus functionality to our VMware environment. Clear, sir? Any doubt? Any questions? I will move.
Clear.
No, not clear.
Okay. So this Nexus 9000 we covered in last class, Vinod. So we'll give you the video. So you go through this Nexus 9000, how this architecture is going to get work, what all those component it is, how it is connected and all.
Okay, okay, sure. Thanks.
Let's move to Nexus next 7000 series. So as I said, in Nexus 7000 series switches, we have the two variant. One is a Nexus 7000 series, which is this one, and one is Nexus 7700 series of switches, which is more powerful compared to this Nexus 7000 series. So in Nexus 7000 series, as I stated here, Nexus 7000 series, they have come with variant version, variant model we can say. So very first model they bring a very small one. This is 7004, 7009, 10 and 18. 10 and 18 model are same in 7000 and 7700 series of switches, right? The changes are that they have the supervisor engine slot, model wise, feature wise, and lot of functionality is going to get changed. What exactly it is? They have decided that how these switches are going to get work. These switches are required to connect the supervisor engine. But before that, I'll give you this. These switches are a modular based switch. All the 7000 series, as I stated, if you can see here, these are the modules, line cards, supervisor engine are here. So we can choose any of the modules, any kind of module we can connect and disconnect in any of the chassis. These switches, these modules and supervisor engine are hot swappable. Anytime you can get disconnect or anytime you can get connect here. This is a normal feature of Cisco, but the major difference which they said that Nexus 7000 series is having the separate supervisor engine, which is supervisor engine 2, 2E and 3E. Initially they launched 1 as well, which has been isolated. Now they launch 2, 2E, E instance for enhanced version. It's an enhanced feature as well. What is the feature? We will discuss what exactly it is feature. But they have the separate chassis. When we ordered this switch, then they give us a blank chassis, a empty chassis. There is no line card, no power supply, no supervisor engine, nothing is there. Right? So any of the chassis we can order based upon our requirement. Right? And once the chassis has been ordered and delivered, then only we need to get assembled this chassis to us ourselves. Right? So the assembling guide is providing an instruction how we are going to do it. Line cards. So we in Nexus 7000 series we have the various line card, various type of line card, especially the 2-1, the M series and the F series. Right? So M series and F series. What does it mean? That in Nexus 7000 series, they suggested that we can use either the M series card or F series card if we required any layer 3 functionality. For example, this interface might require one of the router need to be connected, and this router may provide some layer 3 functionality over the WAN. In that case, this interface must be a layer 3 interface, right? At that moment, this interface cannot be configured if you are going to use this F series of line card. Only M series of line card can have the possibilities, can have the functionalities to allowing us to configure the layer 3 functionality on the interface. The F series of line card can be used for layer 2 functionality. So this major difference they had bring it up initially, and once it has been identified that this is a layer 2 card, this is a layer 3 card, which is a broader level. So based upon that, whatever the data center technology Cisco has developed, right? So that technology based upon their functionality, either it's a layer 2 technology or it's a layer 3 technologies. These technology are going to tag with respective line card, respective modules, right? For example, OTV, you might heard it, overlay transport virtualization. This is what? A layer 2 extension from one data center to another data center. So that technology is only supported by our F series of line card, this one. If we have the M series of line card and we want to use OTV on this M series of line card, then we cannot use. For OTV, we have to use F series of line card. Then only we can go ahead and configure the OTV. Same is VXLAN. You might heard it. This is one of the open standard data center technology which Cisco has bring. So this VXLAN technology is what? It's a layer 2 extension, but it is more flexible, more advanced than this OTV technology. But this is also a layer 2. It's giving us a layer 2 enhancement functionality. So this is also tagged with F series of line card. So based upon the functionality of the technology, they are going to tag with their specific line card. If we have the specific line card installed in our chassis, any one of the chassis, then only we can use this specific technology over there. That was the initial configuration which they guys have bring it up. Initial configuration means all the devices is having their own generation. F1, F series of line card is a L2 card, L2 series of switch. M is a L3 series. And 1 means a very first generation which Cisco has introduced with these kind of features which we just discussed. That all the layer 2 technologies are bind with layer 2 line card, which is F line card. And all the layer 3 are bind with M3 line card, M series of line card. Later on, they identified that this limitation or this technology limit functionality has stopped selling this product because people are not having too much of funding so that they can bring multiple M series or multiple F series of line card. So they introduce a new series of generation which is called sorry, one second, my handwriting is very poor. M2, M3, M4, and the same they do it from F2, F3 and F4. So these new generation, they bring us the concept that we can use any of the line card. We can use any of the line card and the entire technology is going to get support. Either the technology is L2 technology or either the technology will be the L3 technology. In any of the way, the latest line card of M series and F series is going to get work. But the problem was the only for the older line card, the initial line card. We have various generation in one generation it was there that if we are going to use one M series of line card and F series of line card, then in one chassis we cannot use these two line cards together. right? So these all we have the limitation, and they close all those limitation and bring the new generation over us and removing all those limitation to them, right? So as of now we have we have any of the series we can use now with this latest generation, either the M3 or F3 or F4. These latest generation series of card are going to support all the Nexus data center technologies. But always aware, if we have the older series M1, M2, M3 or F1, F2, F3, then these switches are having the limited functionality options. So if the customers are having the older series, then always try to understand which module, which line card is going to get used. Either they are the supportable or no. Here we have this slide. Let me show you what exactly it is. F2E. Yes. So if you can see here, the three type of line card of F series, which is F2, F3 and F4. And M series of line card is going to get support M2 and M3. But if you can notice here, 7000 series of switches can only support F2 and F3. But in 7700 series, which is a next upcoming next series of switches in 7000 series, these guys are support F3 and F4 series of line card as well. Right? So that was the actually limitation, that these switches are only support in certain places. These switches cannot support F4. But the new generation, new series of switch which they had bring it up with higher capacity, they have the option that we can use a advanced series of line card as well, which is F4. And from the feature wise, all these switches, all these model of switch F series, they are going to get support fax, VPC, fabric path, L3 interface configuration, which is initially not possible in F1 and F2 series, that we cannot configure any of the L3 interface. We cannot configure storage connectivity, 𝐂𝐸 technology, right? OTV, Lisp, VXLAN, and M series interoperability. It means that if we have one of the chassis, for example this one, 7000 series, and this series is having a one M series of line card and one F series of line card, then these two line card cannot be worked together. At one time we can use only one line card, either the F or the M, which is only feature, which is the initial feature which they bring it with F1 and M1 series. But later when they introduce the new line card, next generation of line card, F2, F3 and F4, then they bring us an option that they guys can talk to each other. They have the interoperability options with M series. They can work. Same thing is for 7K for M series of line card. They have the option to install M2 and M3 series of line card. But in advanced series, in next generation of the switch, they can have the option to M3 only with a specific module, is a specific technology as well. Right? So they cannot, this 7700 cannot be used for M2 series of line card. You cannot connect. If we try to do it, then this switch is going to get shut down or make this line card to be disabled automatically, and giving us an error message not supported. right? So lower features, lower technology, they are not going to get support. But if you can notice here that M3 features, they are supporting NetFlow, which is the layer 3 functionality, but they are also support VPC, which is a layer 2 extension, layer 2 port channel. So this M series is also supporting layer 2 port channel. They are also supporting layer 2 fabric path, which is the layer 2 technology. Layer 2 VXLAN. So these are the things which are going to get support by this M3 card as well. The layer 2 technologies they are going to get support. This OTV and Lisp are the layer 2 technologies. So later onward, the new generation M3 or F3, F4, these generations are going to get support to our latest interface, latest series as well, latest features, right? These interface are support layer 3 interface, and these M series support the layer 2 technologies. And now they have the option that they can work with F series of line card as well. Okay, M2 series, if we can use, then we cannot use all these features. Just note down somewhere that we have the limitation in our release notes, in our product data sheet. We can see these options are not available over there. Clear, sir? This slide I just introduced because most of the time we have the option, we have the information that management has bring one new line card from the another site and requested us to install in our existing infrastructure. So before going to install this switch, we need to this line card. We need to understand that either this line card is supported to our chassis or no, right? If it is M2 series, M3 series, and which chassis we are going to use. So all these compatibility we have or no. Any questions? Or are we good?
No, it's okay.
Okay, great. Let me erase all those. Okay, this fabric module. We discussed in Nexus 9000 series that the fabric module is placed over there in Nexus 9000 series as well. Here as well, we have the Nexus fabric module in Nexus 7000 series. But the limit is that we can use maximum 5 fabric module in Nexus 7000 series and 6 fabric module in Nexus 7700 series. Fabric module generation Fab2 only maximum can be used, which provide us 550 Gbps of bandwidth. It's a maximum bandwidth which we can opt in Nexus 7000 series of switch. But if we are talking about Nexus 7700, then we can see the fabric module 3 is going to get support for this next generation 7700 series, and the bandwidth speed we can get it up to 2.8 Tbps. It's much advanced, much higher bandwidth, right? So whenever we are going to use or decide which chassis we are going to use, then always think about what is the backplane capacity we have. So based upon that, we are going to get use. And how these fabric modules are going to get connected. For example, this is our line card. On front side, we have the line card installed like this. On the fabric module perspective, where is my pen? So from the fabric module perspective, we can use, on the back side we have the chassis like this, and within this chassis we have the vertical slots like this. And these fabric modules, in fact, I'll show you here. These fabric modules and this line cards are connected one to one. Right? So as soon as these fabric modules, the blue one, and these line cards are the green one, are having one centralized connected point. These points are providing the actual speed connectivity. As I said, one line card, one fabric module is providing 550 Gbps in case of 7K. So if it is 7K, then this the blue fabric module is providing 550 Gbps one line card. And the maximum we have the option that we can install 5. It means 550 multiply 5. 5 5s are 25, 5 5s are 25 and 27. It means 2.75 Tbps speed we can get maximum from this 7000 series of switch. Same information, same thing if we are going to connect this 7700 series. In that case, we can get 2.8 Tbps multiply 6. 6 8s are 48. 16.8 Tbps. Right? Almost quite good speed we are getting in respect of the server for Nexus 7700 series of switches. Let's see how actually it is connected. So from the physical point of view, if you have noticed, one second, I'll show you that Cisco has developed one of the tool for us so that we can see the visualized view of our chassis. Let me bring this window for you. So on the Google, we have to search Cisco 3D catalog. So very first icon when we search, this link says 𝐂𝐤𝐿.com. When we click over here, then it is giving us an option. Either we can install the desktop, this tool on the desktop locally and use it later, or we can use online as well. So I'll select the online one and show you how this tool product, this online tool is actually work. So we click on the product catalog, click on the switching, select the Nexus 7000 series of switch. Select the 7000 series of switch. Now we have the list of switches which we discussed, all the Nexus 7000 series of switches. So we select any one of the switch, for example 7400, then this switch is coming up and show us a 3D overview over here, right? So if you can see here, this Nexus 7000 series of switches look like, look like this, right? These are having a 4 line cards. 1, 2, 3 and 4, right? 2 line card are reserved for their supervisor engine. The remaining 2 line card we can use for actually line card to connect our interfaces. So this is a graphical view that we can see over here, and we have the option that we can move this switch up to 360-degree angle. We can see any side of the switch how the switch is going to get look like, what all kind of modules are connected over here, right? If we want to see inside of this module, then we have the option over here to remove the front cover and see how this exact switch look like. This is a summary front cover summary page, and it says that this is a 7 rack unit switch. So when we are ordering this switch, it is 7004. It doesn't mean it's a 4 rack unit. 4 means it's a 4 line card we can install over here. But actual height of this switch is 7 rack unit. They have the two interface, as I said, is a dedicated line cards, dedicated slots for Supervisor Engine. And the remaining two we can use for the I/O module connectivity. We have the option to connect either SUP2 or SUP2E for Nexus 7000 series. Within this series, within this chassis, we can use any of these line cards, any of these model of line card. We have the option to connect 4 power supply, and each power supply is having the 3000 watt AC power supply. Let me show you the main things which I'm trying to show you here, the fabric modules. Where exactly it is? Okay, this may not be have. This is a Supervisor Engine. We have it? No. Okay, this. Let me open the another switch. I'll show you from there. Switches 7000 series. Let me check either this switch is having. Yeah, because 7004 is quite a small switch. Yeah. So here it is, Nexus 7009. It's a 9 module switch. If you can close this one and click on this yellow one, then you can see a summary information about it, what exactly it is. And if we want to see any of the F series of line card or M series of line card, then we can click over here and the switch or line card will come out and show you the detail, right? It's a summary page, how the switch is going to get work, what all the features, functions we have, what is the switching module. But importantly, if you can rotate the switch on the front side, then you can see these are the upcoming server connected interfaces. These are the server connected interface. But if we can rotate this switch back, then you can notice here that these are some of the black points. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Let me write down. So these are the 5 ports which is having the female connectivity, right? These 5 ports are used for fabric module connectivity, which will be undo. My handwriting is poor. Drawing is poor actually. So they are connected like this. So this is a fabric module. So these fabric modules are connected with this particular black point, and these fabric modules are having a male connectivity. So one side they have the male connectivity and these are having the female connectivity, and those pins are going to get inserted this particular slot and the connectivity will get it in. So in 7000 series we know that we have the maximum 5 fabric module installation option. That is the reason we have the 5 slots over here. Right? Let me go back and remove the fabric module. In fact, if you can see here, this is the fabric module option. So here it is. This is a small fabric module in 7000 series, and this fabric module summary says we can install maximum 5 fabric module. Each fabric module is having a 550 Gbps input output capability for IO module. Right? So this is one of the things which I want to show, and let's move back. Here it is. So these pins are going to get connected to your line card in your backplane capability, right? And give you the connectivity for the line card perspective. You guys remember in older days that the switch, whatever the switch they have in Cisco Catalyst environment, they have the backplane connectivity. Backplane means if we have the line card installed, then these line cards is having the internal cables. Let me change the color. These line cards are having the internal cables which are connecting back to back and providing the inter line card or inter supervisor engine connectivity. And these cables, these are the cables, and these cables are having a limited speed. You cannot extend this speed, right? Whatever the speed Cisco did it initially during the switch manufacturing, at that moment only the speed will be finalized. You cannot have the option to get it increase or decrease later on. But this fabric module is hot swappable and replaceable, upgradable. So initially they have launched fabric module 1, later on they introduced the 2 and 3. So based upon the requirement, they had introduced the new generation and giving you the higher speed of fabric module line card, which can be connected, and your line card, your end devices, which might be your server somewhere, these servers are having a higher speed just because of this fabric module. Right? This is one of the major benefit for this fabric module, and we have the option that we can use only this fabric module here in 7000 or 7700, 9000 series. These fabric modules are connected in a way so that we have the option to get it removed or upgrade or degrade like this. Let's understand the supervisor engine. It's a full width of supervisor engine, right? It's a Nexus 2E supervisor engine. E means enhanced version. I'll show you how it is, but importantly in day-to-day life, what we need to do is, let me make a zoom for this. Where's my mouse? A bit more. Yes, here. Now, if you noticed that this line card, this supervisor engine, Nexus 2E, SUP 2E, is the very first interface is a console interface. So whatever the configuration we have to do, we have to perform initially, that we have to perform it via the console. So this interface is very important in the beginning, right? So that we can tell our remote engineer that this is the first interface is a console interface and second interface is a management interface. Right? So once the switch has been configured initially, then we can use this management interface to get the remote connectivity from the out of the band perspective. This is our separate feature. This is a new feature which Cisco has bring and giving us a separate out of the box management connectivity. There are two USB ports. These ports are used to copying the image file. Ideally, we do it iOS file from the TFTP server or FTP server, but they are dependent on your WAN speed or your LAN speed. But these line cards, these USB ports are 2.x as well as in latest Supervisor Engine, it's a 3.x speed of line card. So they are giving us a higher throughput, higher bandwidth. Immediately we can get copied in a few seconds the larger storage file. These supervisor these sup- these supervisor engine is having the internal storage as well. Let me bring this one. Where it is. Okay, as of now I cannot see, but here it is. We have the internal storage system as well. We have the option to store the connect the hard disk over there. We have the internal memory options. Oh, very bad. We have the option to increase the memory if we want to increase. What is this? Yeah, here it is. We have the option. We have the slots for connectivity to the fabric module, the same slots, the 5 slots. Right, so this is one of the great tool which Cisco has developed for us as a remote engineer, because we nowadays we are not working in front of the device. We are sitting somewhere else and devices, switches, routers are deployed in anywhere in the data center over the globe, and we have to manage those switches. So in that case, sometimes it's big challenging that which port the end user are going to get connect, or which port the server team are going to connect their server. What is the physical numbering? What is the logical numbering? So this switch is helping, this tool is helping us to get these things easy for us, so that we can easily identify that yes, this switch is, this interface is, we have to connect the cables, we have to disconnect the cable, or we can get the console from this interface. Like very first switch, very first line card is a SUP 1, which is active. Second line card is Supervisor Engine 2, which is standby. So that all things we need to get configured, and whenever we need to perform any of the action on active Supervisor Engine, then the same action we have to perform on the standby one as well. Right? So just try to use this tool, which is one of the good tool. Again, I'm going to explain you that Cisco 3D catalog we have to write on the Google, and the very first link which says m.𝐂𝐤𝐿.com, this is used for giving us this 3D tool. Here we can select any of the product which we want to look. So just select the product catalog, select the router, switch, whichsoever we want. Then we can see what is that switch. Okay. Any question till now? Or we'll move, we are good to move to PowerPoint.
Not as of now. You can
No, it's
go
fine.
ahead.
Okay, great. Let me erase. Okay, I guess we have covered all the point except one of those which I highlighted here, that these lines, these switches are having a limitation. Limitation in the sense that we can connect only the supervisor engine in their reserved slot. So in both the chassis, in 7000 or 7700 series, they have reserved the supervisor engine slot based upon the chassis requirement, right? So whenever we are going to get connect, or whenever we plan for any of the interview discussion, the people are asking which port the supervisor engine are going to get connect. So if you have noticed, 10 and 18, 10 and 18 are the supervisor engine slot are same, 5, 6 and 9, 10. But 3 and 4, this 7009 and 7004 is having the 1 and 2 number port, but over here it is 1 number slot is reserved for supervisor engine, and here it is 3 and 4 number are reserved for supervisor engine. So most of the time people are asking where your switch are going to get connect, which module, which line card, which slot your supervisor engine are going to get connect here. Right? So this is one of the important memorizable things that we have to do it. One important thing I just remember that while working on the Nexus 9000 series, we discussed about system controller as well as supervisor engine. So if you have noticed here that we have the supervisor engine. For example, this is a supervisor engine. SUP2 or SUP2E, anyone we can use. So within this SUP2 and SUP2E, we have the one of the chip installed which is called system controller. This system controller chip is inbuilt in supervisor engine, any of the supervisor engine in Nexus 7000, either the 7000 or 7700. Right? So what is the use of this? Use of this system controller is that whenever any of the requests come to from your server, for example, this is your server which is connected to somewhere on your switch, any of the port. Server 1 want to talk to another switch, another server which is server 2 which is connected to somewhere another port on the same chassis or maybe the different chassis. When server 1 want to talk to server 2, in that case server 1 send a request with the destination packet. It may be the R packet or the L2 packet. Once this packet has been come, then the supervisor engine will get it, recognize and understand what to do with this packet. So this supervisor engine will decide, take a decision. Either this packet need to route it or this packet need to broadcast or what need to do. Once the decision has been made, this supervisor engine will make a decision first. Once the decision has been made, then this decision has been handed over to your system controller and the communication is going to get happen to your destination device. Next time when you have some another server connected here which want to talk to server 2 once again, in that case again the switch request comes to the switch, but this time the request will not reach to your supervisor engine. It is not going to your supervisor engine. This request is redirected to your system controller, and the system controller who already know that supervisor engine already decided that where your server 2 is connected. So system controller will give you this information and pass the traffic directly to server number 2. So system controller is what? System controller is the assistant of supervisor engine. Correct? So this is the assistant of supervisor engine. It's a memory, it's a storage based memory. Whatever the decision they have been taken, supervisor engine have been taken, it has been stored in local memory in system controller. It's a cache memory, right? So till the time when the system is up and running, everything is stored in system controller. But as soon as you reboot the controller, reboot the switch, edit the everything, whatever is memorized in system controller has been removed. Right? So system controller is what? System controller is helping supervisor engine, and whatever the next request comes, it will check in his record, in his memory, and based upon the memory database, they are going to get forward the request. But what happened when this memory, when this data system controller has been lost? If we lost it, then what happened? If this system controller has been lost in 7000 series and the request landing to your supervisor engine, he is trying to get forwarded this request, this decision, but this has been lost, so we cannot handle it. Then immediately the supervisor engine has declared that I cannot store this information, so I got failed, and the switchover is going to get happened immediately. So whosoever is a standby supervisor engine is going to make an active, immediately release, immediately make an active, and says this supervisor engine has been failed, and now I become an active switch, and I already have the chip which is called system controller. This is active, perfectly working fine. So whatever the request comes, this request must be redirected to me, and this switch will take over the decision, handed over this decision making things to our local system controller, and the traffic has been routed again. But during this switchover, this traffic switchover, it is going to generate some network outage. A few seconds of network outage has been occurred. And once the things has been restored, again the traffic has been moved back, and the older one is taking the active supervisor engine control. Again the network outage will get it happen. So this is one of the drawback which is happening in Nexus 7000 series or Catalyst modular based switch. For example, 4500 series or 6500 series of switch. So in all the switches, we have the same architecture of supervisor engine as well as system controller. So they did the mitigation of these things here. They stopped this kind of architecture on 7000 series, and Nexus 9000 series. They bring the concept of different. They bring a chassis and says that some of the slots are reserved for supervisor engine. We are not going to consider this is supervisor engine, this is supervisor engine. Right? So I'm not going to consider that this soup is going to get connect to your line card. No. Again, they said I am having a reservation of system controller as well. System controller 1 and system controller 2, supervisor engine 1, supervisor engine 2. So they have removed the system controller from the supervisor engine itself and make it a separate entity, separate hardware box, and configure these two boxes in HA, high availability environment, and configure these two supervisor engine 1 and 2 in HA mode as well. So now the supervisor engine is not dependent to any of the system controller. In how it is, for example, any of the request comes, the supervisor engine 1, they do the process and trying to hand it over this task to system controller A, for example. And at the same time, system controller A has got faulty for any reason. They have down. If this has been down, then the request immediately has been rerouted to your system standby supervisor engine system controller. And we know that they are working in a HA mode, this one. So the traffic has been routed to your system secondary system controller. They will store the input information, whatever the system supervisor engine has been decided, and process the request. Right? So in this case, what happened? The system controller, which is a separate hardware module, has been faulty, but the switchover in respect of the supervisor engine has not been done. And if it has not been happened, then it means there is no network outage. There is no chance of any of the network outage can be occurred in case of system controller failed. Right? So here in Nexus 9000 series, we have changed the architecture. They removed the system controller from supervisor engine and make a separate entity, make a separate hardware box, make a separate slot for them, so that we have very less in microsecond of outage. In fact, not a microsecond. It's a separate entity, separate hardware appliances. They configured automatically in HA appliance. The slots are configured in such a way that as soon as you install the supervisor engine 1, install the supervisor engine 2, same for system controller 1 and system controller 2. They automatically become an high availability part, and one will take an active role and another will be the standby one. Right? So that all we discussed in last class. So this is one of the things they have been do the amendment in Nexus supervisor engine 7000 to 9000 and bring this concept. Okay, so now we have the supervisor engine. It's a simple matrix which I try to prepare for you just to memorize what all supervisor engine we have, what is the functionality, what is the hardware, what is the features we can use. For example, from right to left, we have the supervisor engine 1, supervisor engine 2, 2E and 3E. These are the 4 type of supervisor engine we can install in our Nexus 7000 series of switch. But it's depend which chassis we are going to get used for which supervisor engine. For example, this 7000 series switches. If you have noticed that these 7000 series switches we can install supervisor engine 1 and 2. But 2E is an enhanced version that can be used either the Nexus 7000 or 7700 series of switches. But 3E, which is an advanced series of supervisor engine, has been developed only for Nexus 7700 series of switches only. So just to memorize that Nexus 7700 can be support 2E or 3E. It's an enhanced version of supervisor engine, can be installed in 7700. They have the different hardware speed, like they have the dual core, quad core, dual quad core, and Intel broadband. This is depending on what all CPU, how many CPUs they have within that. They have the 2 gigabit speed, 2.13, 2.13 and 1.6. 64 GB of memory, USB storage, and they have the SSD local storage to them, which is a enhanced version. They bring it up in Nexus 7700 series. And the same functionality has been carried out to your Nexus 9000 series of switch as well. They also have your SSD storage. And the benefit of SSD storage is that it is much faster than your USB card, memory card. And 250, we can install a lot of things over there. Lot of image file. For example, we are going to upgrade our switch from 6.x to 7.3. In that case, the upgrade path says that you can install 7.2 first, then you can install 7.3. So each of the image file in any of these is a more than a GB. If you can see on the software.cisco.com, then one image file is more than a GB file. In that case, if you are upgrading this 7.2 and 7.3, then you have to install at least multiple GBs. For example, this one image file is system start file and another file is kickstart file. And we'll discuss in detail more what exactly these two files is, but each of the file is 2 GB and 2 GB, for example. And we are performing a two-step. So 448, 8 GB of storage at least we need it. Such kind of things we can install, we can use lot of things. We can keep a backup of lot of configuration we can install over there. So that's the reason they have given enough storage space so that we can utilize those spaces for further configuration. We can keep a backup over there, take a regular backup, put it in the chassis, put it in the hardware. In case future onward, any moment of time our chassis has been failed, then SSD, we can remove it from there and then take a backup. Or we can use the same SSD to another switch. Which you have noticed in older version, there is no SSD options. It means we have the flash card, USB card, disk 0 kind of options. Now the virtual device context, which we have discussed, that 7000 series is having the option of virtualization. So virtualization is what? Virtualization is entirely depending on which supervisor engine we are going to get use. If it is 3E, the latest supervisor engine, then we have the option that we can use 8 virtual switch plus 1 admin virtual switch we can use. So one admin means from this one admin switch we can manage the remaining 8 non-admin switch. The same option is for another enhanced version, which is 2E. So in E series of supervisor engine, we can install 8 plus 1 VDCs, virtual switch, but in 2 and 1 supervisor engine, this is 2 and this is 1, we can install 4 plus 1 or 4 switch. This 4 means that we have to reserve one switch, one virtual switch for our administration purpose. And the one switch here is reserved for administration purpose separately. Now they also have given the option for the 2000 series of switch, which we discussed that it is used for fax connectivity. So these 2000 series we can connect up to maximum 64 switches. 64 switches in both enhanced version we can connect maximum, or 32 switches in less than that, 1 or 2 series of switch supervisor engine. Right? So maximum we can connect 64 fax, which is quite enough. Now in Nexus 9000 series of switches, these limits are going to get increased. It is not 64. This is what we have the supervisor engine comparison matrix. So always remember, usually the people are going to get asked how many VDC we can configure in 7004 or 7009. Then it is not related to your chassis. It's depending on which supervisor engine you are going to use within that chassis. If you are going to use any of the enhanced version of supervisor engine, then they have the option to install 8+1 chassis like this one. If it is not enhanced version, then it's depend either 1 or 2. If it is 2, then 4+1, or if it is very old supervisor engine, very old devices, then it is 1. But just for your information, that Cisco has discontinued this switch, this supervisor engine. So now they are not going to use a supervisor engine 1 for anyhow. Whosoever customer are going to use, and Cisco identified that this customer is having supervisor engine 1, they immediately stop their support and recommending to go ahead for upgrade their supervisor engine. Any questions here?
No, it's okay.
Okay. So it's a fabric module. So we already discussed fabric module is what? We have a different generation of fabric module, Fab 1, Fab 2, and latest they have introduced Fab 3 as well, which we can see on the Nexus 9000 series. But various fabric modules, somewhere we have seen the full width blade horizontal, somewhere we have seen the full width blade vertical, and the higher series for Nexus 7700 is a separate fabric module, and 7000 series is having a separate fabric module. So each of the switches, they have designed their hardware parts separately. So you cannot use 7000 series switches in 7700 series of chassis, or vice versa. So their module name as well as has been categorized, which indicate which module, which chassis you can use this module. Let's move. So this is line card or the cables. We already discussed, but some of the part I'll show you that this is a separate cables which I just highlighted here. This is a cable which can be used to connect multiple interfaces, multiple end devices. This cable are used for multiple end device perspective. For example, this one cable you have from the switch perspective, you have the limited number of ports, but you want to connect multiple servers over here. Right? So how you are going to do it? So Cisco bring us this concept, this kind of cables, and says this connector you can connect to your switch like this, and the same cable this cable is going to get divided into multiple parts, and you can connect this cable to multiple servers, server 1, server 2, server 3, and server 4. Right? So these cables, this cable is called QSFP plus, which we discussed. One side they have the 40 Gbps speed or higher, and the other side they have the less speed, 10, 10, 10, and 10. The same situation for here as well. This uplink interface can be the 10 Gbps and downlink interface can be the 1 Gbps. This cable is coming in variant version, variant flavor. It is multi-mode as well as single mode. It is coming for 1 gigabit or 10 gigabit or 40 gigabit as well. Right? Any of the cable we can use, but this cable is very important. Most of the time when you guys are working in a data center, then you have noticed that one side they have the one interface, but the other side they have the multiple interfaces are connected. So these cables are generally used for server connectivity. Latestly, the QSFP plus which we are talking, so this is a QSFP plus kind of cables which is having a inbuilt transceiver connected. So they have transceiver connected cables over there. So you don't need a separate transceiver for that. You have to ask, or you have to told Cisco that boss, we need a QSFP with 40 Gbps one side and 10 Gbps on the downlink side. So they have prepared a cable for you and configured and connect the transceiver within that. So that is fixed. You cannot remove this cable from the transceiver. So this line card we discussed. Let's move to this 5000 series switch now. So 5000 series, as we discussed, that in 5000 we have the two separate series. One is called Nexus 5000 series and another one is Nexus 5600 series of switch. Both switches are having their own characteristics, but if you have noticed here, this 5000 series switches is having some certain speed, like they have the option that they can use up to 10 Gbps of speed, right? 5500 series is having the capability for 1 to 10 Gbps of speed they can be used. But in 5600, if you have noticed here, all the 5600 series switches are having up to 40 Gbps of throughputs, right? So they have developed this switch for the enhanced version perspective, so that we will get a higher speed and with variant flavor. Variant flavor means that we have the option to connect the Ethernet traffic. We have the option for storage connectivity. So this switch is actually designed for your server and storage array connectivity, not any other kind of device. Although we can use anywhere for this switch, but Cisco says that another devices like 7000 series of switches, we have the limited option for storage. We have the limited speed over there. If we want to use storage in Nexus 7000 series, at that moment we cannot get a customized speed 1, 2, 4. Right? Or we cannot use a higher speed, for example 10 Gbps in respect of storage. If we want to use storage over there, then we have to procure a separate line card, which might be costly for some of the customer, cost effective. So they said we are going to build up some of the switches for server and storage connectivity, which is having a higher speed of line card, 10 Gbps or 40 Gbps of line cards. Right? So we can use some of the technologies which is called fiber channel, native fiber channel or fiber channel over Ethernet within the switch and use the existing 10 Gbps speed for the storage connectivity as well. Or if we don't want to use FCOE, then we can use native fiber channel connectivity and get a higher speed. And if you guys notice here, then these switches are having a special coloring mechanism. So now these switches and later new switches 9000 series as well. These switches indicate that these yellow color interface is a 40 Gbps of speed interface. Always remember these yellow interface are the 40 Gbps of interface and their in SFPs are different. If you can notice here, the size of the interface is bit change. It's a bit wider interface, right? Compared to normal SFPs. So that is bit wider. This is the 40 Gbps interface. And this one, this orange one, if you have noticed, these are the normal SFPs, a thin SFPs we can say. So this thin SFP is a normal SFP which can be used for storage purpose. right? So these two separate switches we are going to get utilized here for these two purposes. Now let's understand how exactly what all models we have. So 5548P. P is what? P says we have the option that we can use 1 to 10 Gbps of speed. This P letter says to us that whatever the P mentioned in front of any of the device, any of the model, then this switch is having the 1 to 10 Gbps of speed can be configured. And this 48 means, this 48 says that total we have the 48 interface capabilities. It means that they have given the option that 32 interface has been fixed for 1 to 10 Gbps speed, but the remaining 16 interface we can use one expansion slot which is called jam module. You might heard it. Sometimes people says jam module need to install. So that is one expansion slot which you can see over here in the picture. So this expansion slot we can install it over here. We have the some of the options that what type of expansion slot we want to install. So this total overall is that we can install maximum 48 ports within this switch. The next switch they have bring it 5548UP. P we know it is speed 1 to 10 Gbps, but this U means it's a unified port. Unified means that either we can use this interface for Ethernet or we can use this interface for storage. Any of the way, any of the method, any of the technology we can use for those interface. But the limit is that we have to specify first what type of interface we are going to use for this one, what type of interface we are going to utilize for storage, unified port. So it's a simple type of interface, 32 interface, but as soon as you specified that this is a storage interface or it is a Ethernet interface, then these interface roles are going to get changed immediately. Otherwise, what will happen if we do not have the unified port options available, then we have to separately procure the storage port. For example, FC, native FC. But they removed this option. It says if you do not want to procure a fiber channel interface, fiber channel port or line card, then don't worry. You use 5548UP kind of switch, which is having a inbuilt unified port options. Or if you want more ports, then you can use 96UP, unified port. And T we know, T is what? Is a copper. 10 base T, 100 base T, 1000 base T. So it's a T instance for copper port we want to use. But again, the same 96 port, 32 ports are fixed, and remaining we can use connect for expansion module, expansion slot. Now move to 5600 series. So as I said, they are higher capacity speed, 10 Gbps or 40 Gbps of switches we can use here. They also have the option for UP as well as P. Unified port up to 16 extension port we can get it over here. Q, if you can see here, this Q means a QSFP kind of port, and Q indicate 40 Gbps, just like the P indicate 1 and 10 Gbps of speed. So now we can see here that if it is a Q, that it means this switch is having 40 Gbps of capacity, and there are 24 interfaces which we can use. There are 40 interface, 96 interface, like this. So just to understand that that these 5000 series of switches are going to get used for server connectivity as well as storage array connectivity. So in any of the way we can go and get it used. Why we can use those? Because these switches are having options to make the port compatible with server or the storage, which is not available in your Nexus 7000 or 9000, right? Over there we cannot specify their port like this. They are not providing us unified level of ports. They are the static one. Either we can use these line card for the Ethernet, or we can use these line card as an storage fiber channel. That's the reason the people are not going to use, not disconnected this 5000 series switches. It is still continue, and people are going to use 5600 series of switches nowadays. Lot of the places you have seen these 5600 switches are going to get utilized now. And another important, this Nexus 7000 series switches, Cisco has stopped the production. Now they are not going to create multiple manufacture this 7000 series switches, because now they are giving focus on 9000 series switches and bring the leaf and spine topology in the picture now, because they have the lot of advantage in compared to the 3-tier architecture, the core, distribution, access layer, and the spine and leaf layer. They have the lot of advantage in spine and leaf layer. That's the reason they had stopped the 7000 series and want to use the 2-tier architecture, which is quite possible in this 9000 series of switches. Even though there are some of the challenges they have been identified, and customers have informed him that 7000 series have lot of challenges, right? One of the challenges that one image or the license we have to install to one of the physical chassis, that is not going to get replicate, or that is not having the options to use a separate image file for the separate virtual switches. The license which we have installed on the main physical appliance, that is applicable to all the virtual switches. The OS operating system, whatever we installed on the physical appliance, that is all applicable to all the virtual switches. They do not have the option to make it customized, that one switch may have the different license, another virtual switch may have the different license. Same is for one switch may have the different operating system, or the another switch may have the different operating system. So just like these kind of issues, Cisco stopped manufacturing of 7000 series switches. So they are not going to manufacture the new switches. So the existing customers who are going to use 7000 series switches, only they people are actively working on those. Once the switch has been out, or maybe out of support from Cisco, then the customers are going to upgrade their infrastructure to 9K. Fine, sir. Any questions till now?
No, it's okay. I think the other guy is disconnected.
Is it?
Yes.
I do not have the second window actually open for here. I guess yes, he disconnected. Maybe another guy has joined and he also disconnected. Anyway, he will be back.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Okay, so Nexus 2000 series. So Nexus 2000 series switches is what? Nexus 2000 series switches is a dumb switch like this. It's a physical, it's a switch, but logical, they do not have the any CPU or memory or any intelligence within that inbuilt. So there is no supervisor engine installed on this switch. It is completely a isolate switch, a dump kind of switch. So whenever this switch is going to get used, this switch is connected to any of the upstream switch. It can be 5K, 6K, 7K, 9K or any UCS fabric interconnect. Right? This switch is actually comes into the picture when the customer has raised the concern that 7000 series they have purchased it, but they have the limited number of interfaces. For example, 7004, the 2 slot has been reserved for supervisor engine, and the remaining 2 slot they have it. So it means 48 into 48, 96 port we can use. Apart from 96, we do not have the option to use multiple ports, more ports, even though we cannot install the more line cards over there. So Cisco bring this concept that we can use the one another dump switch, which is going to get managed by upstream switch, and that switch can be the 48 port switch or the 96 port switch, and that switch may have the option either we can use this port as an unified port, 10 gigabit, 1 gigabit or 40 gigabit port as well. So they have bring all those physical layer ports options from 5K to this Nexus 2000 series switches, so that if the customers want to connect their servers to this Nexus 2000 series switches, then they can use it. They can use the unified port to connect their storage area over there. Right? So that's all they want to use for this one, Nexus 2000 series. We'll discuss more how this switch are going to get connect to our infrastructure in 2000 series and all. Right? Right. So in facts, we are going to discuss more how this switch are going to get connect, what is the deployment models and all. Right, I have not noticed the screen was not actually displaying who is connected, who is disconnected. So I could not notice when he was disconnected. But anyway, he will connect and
2 minutes before, maybe 5 minutes before.
Okay. Anyway, any questions for this switching perspective? Because in next class we'll go and discuss about the VDC and facts.
Okay.
Right?
Just one last question. This Nexus 2000, if we are configuring everything from the upstream device, so there won't be even an IP address for a Nexus 2000 series?
No, as this switch is not managed
Physically.
as this switch is not managed by anywhere. So there is no requirement to
And
configure an IP address.
And for example, if I want to use the Nexus 2K for managing like a management switch, and I want to configure from 1 to 20 ports for management ports. So this also will be done from an ACI perspective only.
ACI perspective.
ACI, I mean controller only will be configured even the ports also.
Yes. If you are talking about an ACI, then yes, ACI is what? ACI is a controller who is going to perform some of the configuration and push it to the respective switch. For example, you have the leaf 1, 2, 3 and 4 leaf, and you go to the controller and said leaf 1 you have to make some port with the trunk in VLAN 10. On leaf 2 you make some of the port as a trunk on VLAN 20. So at that moment the configuration is done by the controller, and it's going to the respective configuration is pushed to the respective leaf switches, leaf 1 and leaf 2, VLAN 10 and VLAN 20.
Got it.
But here this Nexus 2000 series switches we are going to use here in Nexus mode, not in the ACI mode. right? When we discuss
Okay.
ACI, at that moment we'll understand ACI, how this ACI or Nexus 2000 is going to get work together. Over there also we have the option to
Okay.
configure the FAQs.
Okay. Okay. Okay.